Good morning. This is Stephen Rosley here at Rosley's Rocks and Gems in Chicago with another edition of the Rosley Rock Report. Today we're going to talk about skulls. I've got 5 of them here, and I just want to go over the history of me and the skulls. About 18 years ago, I had a customer named Gene who wanted me to buy some skulls for him, and I found 3 of them: a smoky quartz, a quartz crystal, and a citrine. What happened is I became attached to the quartz crystal skull. That's this one here. This one I called Shar, and when it came time for Gene to pay for it, I told him I could sell him the other 2, but I couldn't sell him this one because I had connected with it. And Gene said, fine, if I ever want to sell the skull, call him, because he wanted it. Well, what happened, about 2 years later, I ran into some hard times and I couldn't pay my bills. And guess who waltzes in the front door? Gene. He bought this skull and he saved my store, and I was able to pay my bills. And we fast forward to 2006, I get a call from a guy in Oregon saying his brother died and left a large collection of skulls. And I said, it wasn't Gene, was it? And he said, yes. Immediately, all I thought about is Shar, this skull. So I went down to Indianapolis to look at his collection, and he had like 150 skulls. All I really saw was this one. I did see this one here, which I called Big Daddy. I didn't get involved in it at that time, but a friend of mine played with it. He said it's really nice. Well, anyway, I brought Shar home with me, and all of a sudden, this skull starts calling me. And I talked to a woman named Shelley Kerr to write a book on crystal skull consciousness, and she was working with Cheryl Node. And this skull kept calling. On July 23rd, 2006, I went down to an auction, and I visualized coming back from the auction with Big Daddy. That's the name I was calling him. And I bought him at auction. I paid twice as much as I wanted to pay. And I brought him back to Chicago. When I brought him back to Chicago, I sat with him and meditated with this skull and asked, what do you want to be called? And it screamed out at me, Star Sirius. Well, I didn't realize that on July 23rd, 2006 was the day that Sirius opens, meaning it's closest to the Earth for 55 days. Now, Sirius is in the constellation Orion, and it represents the dog. That's where we get the dog days of summer. It's those 55 days that Sirius is closest to the Earth. He also told me to put them in a grid. As you can see around here, they're selenite rods all the way around. What this does, it protects the people who touch the skull. The skulls in here are in a white light chamber. Nothing negative could get in here. Even if my ex-wife would come in and put her hand here, all her negativity stays on this side. Nothing negative. So you never have to worry about who touched the skull before you. Now, crystal skulls are librarians of knowledge. My belief is that we're not here to learn. We're here to remember. They say we only use 10% of our brain. Well, what's the other 90%? It's the library. And these guys are librarians. So when you meditate with them, and you put one hand on each side of the head like this, and you close your eyes, you center yourself, you take a nice deep cleansing breath, bring in goodness, exhale yuck, and just feel. What happens, I'm receiving information. At the same time, I'm giving the skull information that it will store for someone else. That's basically how they work. Shar was my first. Star Sirius was my second. The third one is Rohan. Rohan is a smoky quartz skull that I actually got in Tucson Arizona a few years ago. I went to this guy's booth, and he had skulls, and he had beautiful, beautiful quartz, but the carving was really bad. So I didn't buy any. I went back 3 or 4 times. On the 5th time, I saw this guy, and I said, wow, he's a beauty. He's an earth shaman. He deals with earth energy, where these two are more galactic. Anyway, I bought him with the idea of selling him, because I got a really good price on him, and my intent was to sell him, until I brought him back to the store and realized that these 3 together really work together. Each one has a different information for you, or for anyone who touches them. But he's more grounding. When I went to Machu Picchu for 11/11, I was debating whether to bring him or to bring Shar. Actually, Shar won out because he's only 14 pounds, he's 18, and he's heavier. And so I brought Shar to Machu Picchu for 11/11. The next skull that I got is this one. This one wants to be called Amma. It is an Amazonite skull, and it's beautifully carved. The interesting thing is, the guy who carved Rohan, the guy who carved Rohan, also carved this skull. And he told me that when he was carving this skull, he was thinking of me and Rohan. This one I brought to keep, but it is up for sale. It's got very, very good feminine energy. It kind of brings the 5 together. You'll each get a different viewpoint from all these skulls. Now, the last one, a friend of mine from Brazil stopped by my store, and he had this skull. And this skull, his name is Phantom. And the reason for his name Phantom is, if you look in here, there are 3 phantom crystals. And on this side, there are 2 of them. This skull is what we call the skull is a real complete skull, as far as how it's carved. If you look in the back, the nasal passages go all the way back to the nose. It's got the spinal cord connection. People have really had wonderful experiences with this skull. Now, all these skulls are going to be with me for 12/12/12 in Miami, Florida. And you can come and feel them, and you could bring your own skulls and have them sit and be downloaded. Now, the interesting thing too is the Mitchell Hedges skull was in my booth about a year or so ago. Oh, wait. The interesting thing, the Mitchell Hedges skull, which is considered one of the ancient, was in my booth in March a few years ago, and they downloaded all the information. Now, also, I went to a show in San Francisco where Max was there, and I brought a skull there to be downloaded. But my belief is, since I have skulls carved in China, I send the stone out there, and I can feel the energy when it goes out. When it comes back, it's different. I believe as soon as a stone is carved into the image of a skull, it connects with all the other ones out there. They've got what I would call the skull net, like we have the internet. So information is passed on from each skull. You could have a small skull, and it's still connected. It's like having a small computer connected to a mainframe. The mainframe holds all the information. The skull net holds all the information. So if you just put your hands on it, and you will get the information you need. Now, some people get vivid experiences when they put their hands on the skulls. Most likely these people meditate because they're open to it. Whether you know you get information or not, you do get information. It's downloaded in you. You may not be ready to receive it. What can happen is the information goes into you, you're downloaded, and maybe 2 or 3 weeks later, all of a sudden, you get something intuitive. Where did that come from? Well, most likely it came from the skull giving you the information. You weren't ready to receive it at that point. Now I'm going to show you how I meditate with the skulls, and you can see. Now one of the other things I want to mention is we have an email rock club. If you go to crystalmaster.com, the upper left-hand corner, if you put your email address in, you'll receive a newsletter every Monday morning at 4:50 Chicago time with 2,500 other members of our rock club. I'm working on a book. We're also going to Bosnia to see the pyramid. This will be an upcoming YouTube experience. Now I'm going to sit down with the skulls and I'll show you how I meditate with these three together. Experience of this